Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to my podcast, Don't Get a Therapist Yet. And today I'm very privileged to have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Lara Barnes. She's a primitive reflex specialist and a brain advocate. So, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for being a guest. And would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, Lara?
Yes, so my background is that I have had an experience with my own son. I've gone through over a period of time, and that has enabled me to really understand and learn functional neurology to quite a deep level in understanding how the brain actually is developing as a small infant and all the way through to adulthood. And so where my specialisms is set is in primitive reflexes, which are these automatic movement patterns that we're given to in utero and also to wiggle down the birth canal and actually ensure that within the first few months of life we survive. And those primitive reflexes are given to us for a reason so that we can ensure that our body develops in the right way, but also our brain develops in the right way for those connections to come together. And those reflexes should, in fact, go within. And I went on this journey with my own son, and his name is Archie. But I didn't really see my first child. I didn't really see these kind of behaviors as much as I grew into understanding that what he was behaving like and not learning from was actually the things that were holding him back. And so he examples, missed milestones are massive. And as a mum of one, you don't really understand this.
Mm.
And these are so important in that first 12 months of life that children should, in fact, combat crawl, but then actually go up on all fours and start cross crawling. And that cross crawl pattern is so important. But he didn't do that. He continued combat crawling and he was dragging his left leg. And that's another massive sign. So he walked at 12 months, but he wasn't talking. And then, he was very anxious and he had like this fright or flight, within him. And I found out, later that's another reflex. So that speech delay was due to a motor delay with dragging the left leg, not coming up on all fours. And if you have a motor delay, you have a speech delay. And so he wouldn't speak, but he would just make lots of verbal noise all the time and lots of like, fist clenching and going red because he couldn't actually, um, you know, voice what he wanted. He went through stages of, an hour and a half to get him to sleep. And, we went through, age 2 and 3 being able to say one or two words. But he also had massive sensory issues like cutting his fingernails, having his hair cut, labels on clothes. He couldn't listen to instructions and actually follow through with them. So there's an auditory processing issue. And I'm going to come to the layers in a minute. But as we go through into school, he understood what was going on, but really had no concept of time or he or she. So everyone he would say would be a he. The interaction with other children was very sociable, but speech held him back and he couldn't do that whole playground negotiation. So there was a lot of frustration there. He wasn't able to put, sentences together. So speech therapy was one of those areas we ended up in and seeing, an OT later on as well. But his attention at school in terms of academics was minimal. His ability to process information was minimal. Memory was minimal. Couldn't learn times tables or cat, dog, and all those kind of CVC words. He couldn't write properly, couldn't hold a pencil properly. He wasn't able to write words. There were just letters all over a page. So he, as he progressed through school, he was about 20 months behind all the other children. And so at age 5, we ended up seeing an OT and we had an educational psychologist report done as, you're going to go through these stages. And I paid for all of this myself because trying to really understand where to navigate and who's going to help me. There isn't any help out there. And you might wait months and months and months and too long for any kind of help or therapies. So you go pay for it, which is very expensive. Um, and the OT got him to do up a button, but didn't really, get him to do much else. He became a bit stronger because he was playing on big bricks and trapezes and swings and things like that. So he just didn't progress. And I paid for that for 6 or 7 months at £75 a time, a few times a week. So it was pretty expensive monthly. Speech therapy, we weren't really getting very far with speech therapy. But what really kind of got me to a point was when he used to wet the bed a lot. And so we walked into a chiropractor one day and there was a leaflet, and it was about what holds you back. And one of those areas was just that. And so I asked the chiropractor about it, and he said, I've read this book recently. It's called Disconnected Kids by Robert Melillo. And in fact, it's on my shelf. So this is,
Okay.
and it's the most amazing book because I read it and had this epiphany moment of, oh my God, it's actually fixable. All the things I'm seeing, I can fix it. There's a root
Wow.
cause. And when I really understood that, that root cause comes from, if you can Google it and you go onto the pictures area in Google and you just put in pyramid of learning, and at the bottom of this pyramid of learning, there is this part which is the nervous system of the brain. And that's what you come out with as a baby. You come out with just a brain stem, right?
Hmm.
And there's no brain or connections, it's just a brain stem. And you also come out with a nervous system. And within that nervous system resides these reflexes. They're called primitive reflexes, and they're given to you to wiggle down, turn around, and turn around in the womb and come out head down and engaged. Um, you should have a very normal vaginal birth, and the baby should just come out and everything should be swimming. But most parents that I speak to and work with in clinic, either the baby had come out with the cord wrapped round, they'd come out stargazing. My son came out stargazing, not
So,
with the engaged. And
sorry, Lara, what's stargazing?
where
What
you
is
come
it?
out, they're back to back when they come down the birth canal and they don't actually engage their neck and turn their neck to the side. They come out with their face up. And so that's one sign, because these are things that are holding back that child right from the beginning. And if you have a cesarean section, you're effectively coming out the sunroof. They're not getting any of that bacteria coming down the birth canal for their gut, your bacteria. They're also, coming out of your tummy rather than engaging those reflexes and starting to use them to wiggle themselves down the birth canal. So you're at a point with that child where they haven't started using those reflexes effectively enough. Um, and so, I also saw other things when in the first week, he couldn't regulate his temperature. He was quite a clammy, sweaty child. And that went on for quite some time until, we went to see Dr. Melillo on his functional neurology course that I did in Barcelona for a good 12, 14 months. And I learned so much about the brain. And because you're given these reflexes, there's a few of them. So there's ones like the Moreau, that kind of fright or flight when a baby jumps, and they are in the cot when there's a big loud bang. That should actually go by, 4 to 6 months. And they shouldn't be in that kind of fright or flight. You've got an asymmetric tonic neck reflex, which is, the ability for being able to move the head, track with your eyes, and also coordinate your limbs. And in fact, as a baby, as they turn their head, their arm comes out, right? And
Yeah.
it would go like that. As they turn their head this way, it would do the same. And what you're really looking for is you're looking for these signs that these reflexes should actually integrate. And then you've got a spinal galant one, which affects the posture. So as you roll your finger down the back of a baby's, um, like the either side of the spine,
Hmm.
that that reflex, if it's still there, that's why they wiggle all the time at the dinner table and they don't actually sit still. It affects their balance and their coordination.
Hmm.
And these reflexes should go, at least by 6 to 8 months. And you've got one for the rooting. So every time you stroke a baby's face, and you should do this, you should be stroking their face a lot, it stimulates the reflex and helps it go within. And as you stroke a baby's face, the baby moves towards the motion and the feeling of being stroked. And that then, in effect, they open their mouth. Now, some children I see in clinic, as soon as you go near their mouth, they open the mouth. And that's because that rooting reflex is so strong. And that's also holding back their speech, holding back them understanding how much food they should put in their mouth. And you see some children where they push it in with their fist, like my own son, because he couldn't feel the inside of his mouth. He couldn't feel his tongue. And that then holds back the ability for speech. And that reflex is very much connected to the hand reflex, which is, the ability to grasp something and put it in between your fingers and your thumb to hold a pencil. He used to hold it like with his fist because that's how he could feel it. He can't feel, or he
Mm.
couldn't feel the ends of his fingers to do fine work like beads or Lego. And as soon as I got rid of it, and it took a few weeks, just 3 on his hand, he started playing with Lego. But that hand reflex and that mouth reflex are interconnected, so you have to work on them both together. It's like a very infantile piece. And then you've got a foot reflex, and that foot reflex should go by the age of 12 months because that's when they stand up and they start walking.
Mm.
And when they start walking, they should start talking because effectively their brain has started to come forward, and their frontal lobes are starting to develop, and you've got your motor strip across your ears, and that should develop, and then you should start to talk. So when you come out with that brain stem, your brain grows outwards and then it grows front to back. And within that brain stem, you have your respiratory system, these reflexes, those are the things that start to develop. So when you put your hand in a baby's palm, and they grasp it, you're firing those neurons all the way to the brain to develop their brain because they're using that reflex. Those reflexes also are there to help them roll over both sides. My son only rolled over one side, and then they should help you rock back and forth. That's also helping develop your eye networks too, and it's also helping your balance systems and your vestibular system develop because you're rocking back and forth. And then you get onto all fours, and then you start doing a cross crawl motion, which is the timing of the brain. So as the brain starts to develop and come forward, those reflexes over the period of those 12 months at certain times go within, the frontal lobes develop, effectively the motor strip develops, the child starts talking, and then as they go through to the age of 2 to 3, those frontal lobes grow further and those connections come together. That's what should happen. But lots of children that I see in clinics, either autistic or ADHD or OCD type symptoms, they have a very developed left side, but their right side, so their emotional side, their comprehension side, they're not developed as well. And so what happens is you have a very much on child, go, go, go buttons on, but you don't have that right side to kind of pull them back and go, oh, hang on a second, maybe I shouldn't do that. And there's no switch off. Whereas the other side of the brain is a very developed right side for dyslexic, dysgraphic, dyspraxic children, and they have a very underdeveloped left side. So, the likes of verbal reasoning or understanding how to read, even writing and speech is all on that left side.
Hmm.
So, those are the things that those children find very difficult, but they're very connected emotionally. And so, what I do is I actually do some assessment on them with regards to the primitive reflexes. And, there's about 8 to 10 of them that we test. And we do these exercises, but we use an incredible device called a Resimax, which is like a vibrational device and it
Okay.
vibrates. And we can use the sensory system with red or blue glasses, depending on what side of the brain we're trying to develop out. And then we use smell. So we use different smells for different sides of the brain. So we're stimulating the olfactory bulb up the nose. We're stimulating the using different colored lenses for the eyes, the visual system. And then we're also using like a tactile vibration, and you can use vibrational plates too, because a lot of these children don't feel their body in space. Sounds strange, right? But they need to be able to feel their body to start to, develop these networks and get these reflexes to go within. And then what I do is I work on their balance systems. So once you've got the foundation in and
Hmm.
those reflexes are nearly gone, then we work on balance and core strength. And then we work on eye alignment. And then there's other specialists that do incredible work in terms of, ensuring that they can converge and diverge their eyes properly together. Because what you'll see is lots of these children, if you put your finger in front, they just don't track. They're like over here and they're not following your finger and they actually can't because their eyes don't actually work together. And so if you start at the foundation on primitive reflexes, then you work on the balance systems, then you work on eye alignment and auditory, you can then do a lot more frequency work. And really understanding what those frequencies are is really, really important. So, we've got different brainwave frequencies, and for
Hmm.
those kids that are really on, and won't calm down and kind of bounce off the walls, and I see lots of these children, what you can do is you can use theta music you can find on YouTube to put
So,
on in the background.
can you just describe what theta music is, Lara? Just people might
Yeah,
not know
so
what it is.
calming. Theta is the brainwave that you want to be in when you go to sleep. It really calms the brain. So a lot of these kids are very much in delta waves. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to take them up through, delta, alpha. We want to take them into theta, and we want to be able to ensure that they are being able to kind of calm their brain down. And it's because they have a very active left side, but an underactive right side. And so we're just trying to ensure that we calm down that left side so we can then help integrate those reflexes for them to be calm enough for us to do these exercises to then bring up that right side and develop the right side so we have a more balanced brain.
Mm.
And those are the things that I really work on in clinic with patients, with the little kids that I see. But also, I have been seeing adults too. So, some.
Just sorry, Lara, can you just give me an idea what sort of is there different treatments for different age range? What sort of age would you see a child and up to when?
Yeah, so I see children of all ages. I've seen kids from two. The earlier you get them, the better. If you know that
Hmm.
there's something wrong, it's easier to change it. It's faster. You can use their sensory system. The older they get, the harder it is, because they're very, very dominant one side. They've gone through these stages um, in terms of development. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to then change that. And it's definitely possible because it's neuroplasticity. It just takes a bit longer. But the earlier you get them, the better, because you can have a bigger influence on them. But also, I'd like to say that it's not just doing these exercises, a whole body approach. You have to be very conscious of what environment we live in, what they're
Hmm.
being exposed to. And there's just so much to it. But we've got a very toxic world. We've got lots of toxins and mold in our foods. There was a PubMed paper that I can give you to put in the notes, but our cereals in the UK are just full of mold. So if you're feeding your child
Oh,
cereal, stop eating cereal. We're just growing the mold inside us. Our microbiome is changing so much. It's so yeast and candida focused. We're like not, we don't have the specialist or the species in there in order to keep us balanced. That then drives the brain because you've got that gut to brain connection up the vagus nerve. And so, those are the things that I work on with a functional nutritionist, and we do lab testing. For these children, we understand what's in their stool, what their microbiome is. Are they methylating by
so
doing
what's microbiome and methylating?
so microbiome is within your gut and your colon, you have a garden, a very vast garden of different species, and these species interact and work with each other, and you feed them when you eat amazing foods like the colors of the rainbow foods and good organic grass-fed meat or good um kimchis or sauerkrauts or you're effectively feeding all of these different species with very rich food. But if we're living on a very high carb diet,
Hmm.
what you're going to see is you're going to see overgrowths in that microbiome of certain species that are then weeding out. So these are like massive amounts of weeds, right? And they're weeding out, they're overgrowing your amazing ones that are keeping you well. So if you're constantly sick and you're eating a lot of carbs, you need to start changing your diet to change your species. And you can do this within a month, you can change your species quite easily if you just stop eating carbs. And we also are living in a very blue light world. So we're on blue devices, we're on laptops and computers. We've got those terrible light bulbs now since they took the other ones away from us. So we have a very blue world that we live in, and our eyes shouldn't actually have blue. We live inside a lot as
Mm.
well, and that's also causing our brain to degenerate. We don't get enough fresh air and go out into sunlight. When we go into sunlight, we wear sunglasses, and that's just crazy because your body is effectively taking in vitamin D from your retina. And you need that vitamin D from the different spectrums of light that we have from the sun, and we shouldn't be wearing sunglasses. And in fact, your body should be able to um, regulate your largest organ, which is your skin, in order to not burn. But what we do is we go and cover ourselves in sun cream, block all of the vitamin D, put sunglasses on, go out in the sun, and we're not actually getting the benefits from the sun, and we are cellular. And so, when it comes to the gut and the microbiome itself, your richness in your garden is going to keep your immune system strong. And if you've got a strong immune system, you're not going to come down with a lot of the different illnesses or different diseases. And so, keeping off of the carbs and keeping off of the gluten as well as dairy, because they're all inflammatory, those are the things that are really healthy for your brain. And then when you start thinking about the environment that you live in, so perhaps you live in a house that's got a moldy bathroom and it's constantly moldy and it smells and there's a horrible smell, and you are living in that area, you are breathing in those mold spores. So what people don't realize is they might have chronic sinusitis or they might have gut issues where food just goes straight through them and they've constantly got diarrhea or soft stools. Or you could be on the other end, which is, constantly blocked up and you have constipation. But what you need to really consider is if you're living in a moldy environment, you do have mold in your body because of the environment you live in, and then all of our food is full of mold. So you're actually growing a lot of mold inside you. So you can go and have a mycotoxin test and you can get out of the environment and stop eating those types of food to feel better. But if you've got sinusitis or regularly reoccurring colds or sinus issues, and it's something that you just live with, then you need to ask why. You may have
Mm.
lots of allergies too, and that's because you're growing mold in your nasal cavities. And your nasal cavities are very close to your brainstem. And this is where, lots of our function actually starts. And if you have a child that is living in a moldy environment, this is why they probably got their primitive reflexes, because they started off with an imbalanced brain. They didn't actually integrate those reflexes. And now you've got mold in the nasal cavities, which is very close to the brainstem, and you're holding back that child from its development. And so, though you need to detox that child, you need to get rid of, there's some amazing peptides and nasal sprays you can use in order to get rid of it, like EC3 nasal spray, that's really good. And there are, great microbiome, like Megaspore products that you can buy. You can buy them on, different websites online. Just put in Megaspore, and then you can open one of the capsules, and there's spores of like bacteria that are really good. And you could just, wet the end of a cotton bud and take some of those spores and put them around your nose, and you're then basically growing the better microbiome inside your nose to help weed out the mold. So you're putting good bacteria back in, but you're also using nasal sprays to kill the bad ones. And so that's going to help you clear up all of your nasal issues. And also, if you've got it in your nasal cavities, you're going to have it in your mouth because there's a microbiome there, and you're going to have it in your gut. And also you may even have it on your lungs. So there's different things that you can do, but getting it out of your nasal cavities is really going to start to help all of those systems and get yourself out of that environment.
It
This
just
sounds
sorry, yeah, like just to go back a step, and so you said that sometimes you can have mold in your house, is one thing you said, and I'm just wondering how you would know that. I mean, you probably see some mold in your house, or whether it's a smell, a thing like that. So sort of step one is, how do you know you've got mold in your house?
I think you can smell it.
Hmm.
Also, older houses have, a lot more mold capabilities um, because they're older, right? They've been here a long time. However, they're a lot more ventilated in some respects than our houses now. We use plasterboard and plaster, and we've got if we have a leak behind the plasterboard and you don't know it, you might be able to smell it. But also you might start seeing black mold on the walls or on the flooring, or and you should get that sorted out and remediated because
Yeah.
it can have huge impacts on your health long term. It can cause, different cancers. It can cause, long-term degenerative diseases like Parkinson's and, dementia. So it really does have a huge impact on your
Okay.
body because
Yeah.
there's a microbiome that shouldn't be there, right? We shouldn't
Yeah.
have them in our body there. We're hosting them.
Okay, so what step one is actually identifying whether you do have mold is one area you're sort of talking about, and then to get that treated as soon as possible regarding get rid of the mold. And then you're saying if you do notice you've got mold, then you might be affecting your nasal cavities, and there's some drops that you can take to actually reduce, and by working on the nasal cavities, it helps the rest of your body as well. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does help. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? There's a lot to it, isn't there? Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot to it. I think it's, when treating children, or even adults that come in that have different imbalances.
Mm.
So those symptoms like anxiety or, you know, um, a brain that is just constantly on.
Yeah.
uh, a child that isn't able to learn or can't listen, they know you know that they're hearing you, but they just can't listen and process information.
Interesting. Yeah.
A child that can't speak. These are all things that are symptoms that are treatable if you can understand what is causing it. And where I go with this is I look at the root causes. So that's
Mm.
why I was so inspired by Dr. Melillo's work. And that's why I went and learned functional neurology in order to help my own son.
Hmm.
And now because I've learnt it to such a degree that I know I can help other people, I've gone out with my business Brain Development UK, and that's braindevelopment.co.uk. But I've also run a clinic on most Saturdays, and I take appointments online as well. So I can do both with parents depending on where they are.
Sure.
But it's really rewarding in ensuring that I can help with the root cause. And I had a parent on this morning with a child that I did a call with her, and we were doing a check-in call because the most important thing for me is that I'm supporting and getting results.
Of
Because I've
course.
been through the journey in seeing multiple doctors where you just don't get the support. You
Mm.
go pay them a ton of money and you just don't get that aftercare support. And so I had a call, and her daughter, she thought that she was never going to get her daughter to do the exercises, that she'd never liked using, that amazing little vibrational device, the Resi Max. And there were so many things she thought she wasn't going to do. And her daughter's obviously liked the sensory input. She's liked the fact she's engaging with her mum by doing these exercises, and she's doing them and she's seeing results. And even the school have turned around. She's in a special school and said, "What are you doing differently?" Like, we're seeing
Wow.
she's more engaged, she's holding a pencil better, she's able to turn on the tap. Um, you know, she's talking, she's with and talking to the other children. She's engaging way more in the academic work than ever before. What's
Wow.
happened? And even the parents have said, we've seen it at home as well.
Yeah.
Now, I've been working with her a month, and she's
Wow. Major difference, isn't it?
never
Yeah.
seen any of these changes with her with any other
Yeah.
therapies. So I know that we're treating the root cause.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's so important, like you say, what you said, to actually understand the brain at a very, very early age, what it looks like and what it's doing. And so that you can kind of adapt it early on, like you say, to sort of reset it. I think you're sort of saying get the
Yeah,
balance right.
yeah,
And then not having
absolutely.
all these additional problems that a child can have because they've got this imbalance in their brains is what I it's my way of saying it. It's an imbalance, isn't it? And you're able
It
to
is.
sort of reset that with
Yeah,
your various tools and assessments and skills and knowledge. And that's a really good message to hear. And I'm sure it helped loads and loads of people because, I mean, I know one of the reasons I wanted to invite you, Lara, because there's a lot of neurodiversity around at the moment. It's good it's being recognized, but I think what you're saying is I think you mentioned a couple of times with an ADHD brain or dyslexia brain, it could be about finding ways to balance it better. Am
yeah,
I all
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a root cause to it, and you can find that root cause and ensure that you can put things in place. And there are exercises that, as well as using those bits of equipment, the smell, the glasses, the Resimax, to really stimulate those areas for them to go within. So that's all
Mm.
we're trying to do, is stimulate those reflexes for them to go away. And that helps mature the bottom part of the
Mm.
nervous system. So it's kind of like gaps in a wall.
Yeah.
A child might not have crawled on time, or they might just crawl for 4 weeks and then they stood up at 9 months and started walking. That shouldn't happen. That is like wrong. There is gaps in their ability for their brain to develop if that is the case. Or they might start talking at 10 months, and you might think, oh, my child is so advanced, but that is not right. That should
Mm.
not happen. Their motor system should develop first, to a point where then they can start talking. So they should be walking before they start properly talking. And so there are these really rigid, in Dr. Melillo's book, it talks about those motor milestones, and, how many words at certain ages that these children should be speaking. And it goes through so many of those stages. It's so important that you're tracking your child to those milestones and ensuring that they're as close enough to those age groups or months as possible before the age of 12 months. And if not, you can do something about it.
Mm,
You can do these exercises. And,
mm,
if I'd have known all of this when I had Archie, we wouldn't have gone through everything, but I wouldn't be
mm.
doing what I'm doing now. So,
No.
there's a reason for everything. And I do really, truly believe that you're sent a child like this to either teach you something or to actually help unlock them.
Mm,
And, you've been given that challenge to help unlock them. And I see so many of these children actually being unlocked because parents are so determined
mm.
in order to do it. And they will go to the end of the earth for their
Yes,
child.
very good,
Think
isn't it?
there's just
Yeah.
so many therapies out there. Parents don't know.
Yeah.
On a call this morning with another parent, they said we've spent thousands on therapy. I just don't know what I should be doing next. And every therapy has a point in time. I think it's understanding that there is a pathway to healing and that there is a root cause. And if you start with the bottom and the foundation of the brain, these other therapies can come in if you want to use them, but you need to set a strong foundation. Otherwise, you're coming in at a pyramid at the top with like academics, and you're trying to get a child to um, learn how to do something at school, like times tables or learning how to read. But if you've got a foundation that's a bit
Mm,
squishy and there's gaps in that wall that's missing, and you haven't got good, solid foundation of balance and eye alignment, they're not going to be
mm,
able to learn. They're
mm,
not at a stage of learning. And
mm,
that's where I found my son. We were at that point in time where he just wasn't able to learn. And it wasn't until, I'd gone through some of these primitive reflexes, balance, core work. We'd used the sensory equipment. And then one day I went into school and I saw his teacher and they said, "What have you done? What have you done?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "He's sitting there listening in class, sitting still. What have you done?" And I said, "I integrated his asymmetric tonic neck reflex." And they went, "Tell me more."
Does he
So I
understand what you were saying?
no, but I talked about primitive reflexes and I talked about the work I'd done with his sensory system. And, he said week over week, it was like a change that they had never seen in him. And he was ready to learn. And
Wow.
actually, because of that, they asked me to put in a sensory program in place at school where they did these primitive reflex exercises and they saw
Oh.
huge changes in some of these children,
Oh.
like the unregulated ones, the ones that were very
Yeah.
emotional down. They started seeing a huge change in one child where they said that they weren't up and down anymore, but they knew the day that they missed the reflex exercises or the sensory program because that child would just go up and down. So it was the ability to regulate their emotions that they were seeing, as well as one little girl that just didn't talk at school
Mm,
and really wasn't could talk but just didn't. And then the mum came to see that one of the Senko teachers and said, "What have you been doing to my child? Because she's coming home and talking to me all the time now, whereas before it was very difficult to get her out of her shell." And so that was a huge change, and she was interacting in class. So it was just a massive change because we started to really stimulate those reflexes, which were resetting and plugging those gaps in her
mm,
developmental trajectory.
mm. And I think, I sort of come from the other end is that I often see adults or maybe young people who've had lots of problems because of their, neurodiversity or some sort of form of trauma or something like that. So they come with lots and lots of problems because they've suffered. Like you say, if they can't concentrate, like if they've got ADHD, it's not the ADHD, it's the suffering that has caused them to not learn as well, or it affects their relationships. I think what you're doing is really, really good, is you're really trying to set the bar from the developmental milestones early on, so that their attention to learn and their ability to socialize is there already, or those foundations is what you're working on, isn't it? And that's so fantastic to know this is around.
Yeah.
It's not well known, is it? But it's really,
No,
really good
yeah.
stuff that
No,
people can relate to.
yeah.
Um, it's fantastic, and it's great that you've been allowed to do that in the school and that people are seeing the difference as well. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned trauma, I mean, that really goes back to the nervous system.
Yeah.
It goes back to that kind of fear paralysis reflex, and it goes
Hmm.
back to that Moreau reflex and it being triggered all of the time. Um, you know, but when you start looking at some of these other reflexes too, they really do hold back children because they're constantly firing and they're not integrating. And so therefore, they need to be able to be used and stimulated very quickly and very consistently in doing these exercises so that you use the sensory side of the body in that nervous system to then integrate them.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's so easy, but then it's just not out there.
mm. It's
So
easy when
when
you know how, Lara, isn't it? It's easy when you know
it
how.
is, I know exactly. It is.
Mm. Okay. So, and just so I do want to go back a little bit. Like you said, give up carbs, but you also said other foods as well. I think you said yeast, dairy, and there was another one, which I've forgotten what you said.
Gluten, yeah. So
Gluten,
if
that's right. So it's that to me, I just thought, oh, that sounds quite a limited diet. But could you perhaps give a little bit more information as to, what would be a good diet that you would recommend for people?
Mm. So anything that grows on a tree or grows in the ground or grows on a bush, anything that's natural.
Okay.
Anything that is localized is also very good for you. So buying from local farms or farm shops or things like that is also very good for you. Eating by the season, so not eating strawberries in February is, another good one. And also eating the color of the rainbow. So, a lot of it stems around lots of vegetables, and meats. Also, fruits, but limited amounts of fruits. Berries, okay, but some of those berries, if you've got a very candida rich, like yeast rich stomach, because you have been eating carbs for a long time and you've got loads of like nasal problems and you drink buckets of milk too, that's also very inflammatory as a food, as well as cheese and anything to do with milk and dairy. Those are causing the symptoms or allergies that you actually have, hay fever, any of that, anything to do with that. Also any eczema, anything skin related is always gut related. So if you gave up and you just, started to phase out and reduce the amount of gluten and dairy, so gluten is in wheat, right, in the breads.
Hmm.
That's also, there's yeast in there as well. So the more yeast you eat, the more it grows. So if you give up all of those carbs and white foods, biscuits and cakes and things like that, and then you go on to more of a natural diet, which we all know we should be on, which is difficult, it will help reset your microbiome. And then you can also, use different supplements as well, go out in the sunshine, make sure that your circadian rhythm, you're sleeping at the right time and you're sleeping through, and you're also getting up at the point where the sun's coming up as well, and you're seeing the sun go down, you're seeing the sun come up. That's also very good for your body, particularly because we are all in these blue lights all the time.
Mm,
And it's just that whole ability to reset will help your gut to brain vagus nerve and the connections that is actually going to the brain, as well as the reducing the brain inflammation that these foods cause,
mm,
because they're full of antibiotic and they're
mm,
full of spray pesticides.
mm,
And wheat's pulled off of the field, they put it in storage, it's damp because it's always damp here in the UK. And then it grows mycotoxin, and then they don't go, oh, that little piece of grain's got mold on it. They just go and put it into our food system because they want the money for it, because they've spent a ton of money spraying it with loads of pesticides, and then we consume it. And the
Mm.
same with meat, thinking about the meat that we're eating. Think about how many times those cows have been injected with different things, or their food that they're eating has been sprayed, and then what we're actually consuming, and then it's like the levels and levels and levels that our liver
Mm.
goes under in terms of pressure. And our liver is our biggest organ. It's the size of your hand. So it is the thing that you need to, for controlling your hormones, of controlling your ability to digest food and take in the right amounts of nutrients. You need to have a very clean liver. And so you doing a liver cleanse with castor oil, every night, and sleeping with a liver pack on, which is just a piece of material, right? You can just put some very cheap £6 organic castor oil on your liver every night. And you can just look up where your liver is in your body to make sure that you're putting it on the right area. But you can cleanse that, and all of that cleansing then comes out, you know, through your bowel movements. And I did it for about a year because I was always waking up at 2, 3 in the morning. Ever since I had Archie, it was like definitely a hormonal thing. My estrogen was too high. And so what I did was it used to make me constipated. And so what I did was I used castor oil. It's called a fushi. It's like you can buy it for £6 on Amazon. And just a teaspoon of that, and you put it on your liver, and you just rub it in with your palm, and you put on this little piece of material so it doesn't go all over your it's got like a waxy back, and it's called a castor oil pack. And I did it maybe 3 times a week for good 6 to 9, 12 months, something like that, on and off. And I sleep all the way through now, no problem
Mm.
at all. And I
Fantastic.
have done that for 13 years. I hadn't slept all the way through. I always used to wake up between 2 and 3, and that's a sign that your liver isn't is working overtime at night. So it really helped me.
That's amazing. And again, I speak to a lot of people with insomnia, so I think they really will love that tip and encourage them to try that as well. Because, like you say, and if you're out of sync in your body and you've got all these
Mm.
kind of microbes, you don't really know, do you? But you could do these things to actually really help improve your health and well-being. Yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah, yeah, really good tip.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So it feels though there's can you tell us a little bit more about a bit more details about how you help people and if people want to know a little bit more,
Yeah.
Lara, how they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a website called braindevelopment.co.uk.
Yep.
And you can contact me. It's just Lara, Lara, at braindevelopment.co.uk. You can request a meeting. I can jump on the phone and have a chat with you. Or you can book in with me via my website. I also, I'm starting a course in September on what I know and sharing that with parents as well. You can come and see me in clinic most weekends, and you can book in. And you can do that via my website or just contact me. So I am seeing patients online. I can do online primitive reflex training.
Hmm.
I can understand where your child is from their systems perspective in terms of their functional systems, and also whether they're very left brain or right brain. And we can work together on identifying what's wrong and what are the top 3 things that you want to change. And we can go through the reflex training. I can teach you how to do it. And also it's 20 minutes a day with your child maximum. You don't have to do it all at once. You could do it in bits and pieces. But yeah, that's how you can get in contact with me.
Lovely, Lauren. And I love the way that you empower parents as well, that you do the assessment to actually work out what the problems
Yeah,
are. But then you've got a treatment plan, haven't you? But it's
yeah,
about encouraging the parents to sort of, depending on the age of the child, of course, as you said, to sort of take that on board and to sort of work through that. It sounds like a really amazing and very, very useful service to people who I'm sure are suffering massively with, why is my child child not doing X, Y, and Z. I mean, I've worked with parents who brought their, have talked about their problem children and how difficult it is to get any help whatsoever.
Brilliant.
And you'd be an ideal person to help them. I hope they listen to this podcast and get in touch with you because it sounds as though you've got massive knowledge. And it's nice to hear that Archie's doing well. It's that
You're doing
he's learning
exceptional.
now and
Yeah, I feel
he's
very proud.
socializing. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's
Okay.
exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And how that makes you feel as a mum as well.
Well, you don't
How
have to
different.
worry anymore, right?
Yeah.
You used to constantly worry about whether he was ever going to leave home, whether, he'd be able to get any exams, or whether he'd be able to do what he wants to do in life, or will he always be held back? And now I don't need to worry, and
Mm.
it's such a huge relief. Yeah.
It's giving him a completely different quality of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's getting his health back, which is the most important thing, isn't it? So that
Yeah.
he can actually now thrive and learn and enjoy life rather than having all these difficult setbacks. So well done just for changing one person's life. But it sounds as though you've changed many others as well, Lara. And thank you so much for your dedication and your hard work to learn all these facts and to share those with other people. I think it's amazing what you do.
No, I appreciate having the time with you to go
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, it's
Thanks.
really, really great. Okay, so please, please, please get in touch with Lara. All the details will be in the show notes as well. So if you didn't catch it on the podcast, just go to the show notes and you'll find all the ways to contact her. And if you're still having problems, you just contact me, wendycastelino.com, and I will pass that on to Lara. So thank you very much, Lara. And thank you, everybody, for listening.